All right, let's talk about OnlyFans. So there are basically, how would you say this? There are three functional ways to categorize behavior. There's behavior that should not be stigmatized and also encouraged, like, going to therapy and all that. It previously was stigmatized, it shouldn't be anymore, and people should be encouraged to go. Then there are things that should not be stigmatized and actively discouraged. So like smoking, for example, most smokers know that, what they're doing is unhealthy for them, and stigmatize and make them feel bad. It doesn't improve anything. It doesn't open up a gateway or a path of empathy to draw someone out of that habit. But it definitely shouldn't be encouraged. And most people who smoke cigarettes would probably agree, like, no, you shouldn't actually start smoking cigarettes if you don't. Most people do it because they're addicted. Then there's behavior that should both be stigmatized and actively discouraged. So this would be like being mean to a service person at a restaurant, right? Like if someone like blows up on the waiter at a restaurant, that is something that warrants, like, if a friend you trusted asked you, hey, is there anything I should know about this guy? You'd be like, this person is an asshole, right? That's the stigmatizing I'm talking about, not legal stigmatizing or something like that. I think OnlyFans fits into the second category of should not necessarily be stigmatized, but should definitely not be encouraged. Because the way I see it, look, as a white male, I can speak on behalf of women everywhere. I happen to have a minor in gender studies, so technically my opinion on women's issues is more legit. What was I going to say? So the thing is it shouldn't be stigmatized because, in some sense, like, well, I don't know. I go back and forth on this a little bit because, here's my perspective. OnlyFans is bad for men primarily, or I guess whoever uses it, but it's 99% men, right? Paying for intimacy, the monetization of intimacy. When people talk about like, I hate capitalism and I want to burn everything down, there's nothing that makes me more sympathetic towards the capitalism materializes and monetizes everything than something like OnlyFans, which is the literal monetization of human intimacy. Because my understanding, and there's a good video by, I believe it's Glink, who like interviews different people, who subscribe and people who make it. And all of the people who subscribe and all the men who subscribe, the primary thing that they say they like is the human intimacy connection, right? The actual like emotional connection.
I think we're monetizing loneliness, actually. Because a lot of people who buy these, they're lonely people, and then people are taking advantage of that.
And that to me is fucked up because now we're monetizing that. And I view it like a drug. So do I blame the women who do it? It's like, no, it's legal. And it is ultimately, I think it's men's responsibility in this case to not allow themselves to fall into that trap. It's like, there's an infinite number of temptations that lie before you. To say, well, the men who get sucked into OnlyFans, it's actually not their fault because they're disenfranchised and depressed and all that. And it's like, well, that is sort of like denying them agency. So you can't do that. So the question is like, if it is like dealing drugs, should they be stigmatized? It's like, well, I would not stigmatize a drug dealer per se if they're just like selling weed or something like that. Although weed's probably worse than porn, right? I mean, who knows? That's a purely neuroscience question. Point is, my point is specifically on the OnlyFans is something I don't think should be actively encouraged. Like, you can be sex work positive without thinking like other people should get into it, right? And I think most pro-sex work people would be like, of course, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But here's the issue. There's certain worldviews that people live out that I don't think can coexist over long periods of time. So for example, think about monogamy and polyamory. If you live in a monogamous society, right, which is I think it's actually what most societies tend towards, even like tribal societies. I think Robert Sapolsky says that in his lecture, but I could be wrong.
Marriage, clearly, we've heard about monogamous pair bonding species. In terms of the formal structure of marriage, it is universal. All human cultures have some version of it. Across all human cultures, more than 90% of people wind up in that culture's equivalent of a permanent, stable relationship. Even though historically the majority of human cultures have been polygamous, nonetheless, amid them, the vast majority of individuals have been in monogamous relationships.
If you're in a monogamous society, then the problem with like polyamory being normalized is that it basically gives every person in a monogamous relationship a intellectual excuse to cheat, basically. Because you can just say, well, it turns out that really I didn't know I was actually polyamorous this whole time, and I discovered it as part of my sexual identity or whatever, and it's like, oh, I see. Like, if someone says that after they cheated on someone, the person who got cheated on and all their friends are going to be like, fuck that, this, is complete bullshit. And the polygamous person or the polyamorous person and all their friends are going to be like, no, like, they shouldn't be stigmatizing your identity. And then you get these, like, different tribes, essentially. And I think that permeates all society, and you can't do that. So OnlyFans is the same way, where I don't think, like, oh, we're friends, like, she does sex work and I don't do it. And then, like, the woman who, would be horrified if, like, a nude image of her was online. Like, well, what's her sex worker friend going to say? Like, it's really not that bad. It's not like you should actually, it's okay. And, like, I do it all the time. It's getting way too into the weeds here. What's my overall point here? OnlyFans should not be stigmatized, but it should be discouraged. Like cigarette smoking. Cigarette smokers should not be stigmatized. I think it is up to men to, the market is who creates the market is the problem. And to even begin to lever blame at the creators, it's like, could it be like, I would never date a woman who does OnlyFans, in the same way that I would not, like, think that someone who charges other people money for intimacy is doing a good, like, I wouldn't want to be around that type of person. Right. And that's a personal opinion. And, maybe if I was more of a Gary V fanatic, hustle culture all day, mode, I'd be like, no, that's fine. Like, money's the most important thing. And what if they do that shit and they give to a charity? Who knows? Anyway, just thought I'd share some thoughts on OnlyFans. So good luck and Godspeed.